To Sri Nisargadatta's I Am That. Let me mute everyone here real quick.
Sorry.
Fun of it all. So everybody's muted, and that triggers my next statement. Feel free to unmute for any reason at all. I want to hear what you are asking or saying or challenging or anything along those lines. And we're on the 18th chapter. To know what you are, find out what you are not. There's a couple of reasons, even in just that title, even in that title, you can talk about it for a while. What's this idea? To know what you are, find out what you are not. Very interesting practice. There's so many reasons behind it. One is by finding out what you are not, you protect yourself from having your ego encapsulate or incorporate whatever it is that you're looking at. So if the more things the ego identifies with, the bigger it gets. And so having a practice of identifying what you are not prevents that immediately, stops the ego from collecting ideas about itself and getting bigger and bigger. And it also gives you a notion of being attributeless, really. What can you say about yourself? There's only three positive things that you can say about yourself. There's only three things that actually belong to you. And that those three things are what? Your existence, your wisdom or intelligence, and your bliss, your love. And so that, of course, triggers my 2-sentence sermon always that I give on that notion, because it's very helpful to sort out the mind. There's only three things you can say about yourself, right? I am loving. You can't say that one, because that is part of your nature. I am wise, or I am intelligent, because that's part of your nature. I exist, because that's part of your nature. Any other attribute that you say, it's very helpful to get a pointer on some wrong thinking. You can't say I'm angry, because you cannot be angry. It's not in your nature. Only a mind can be angry. So when you say I'm angry, you should properly say, my mind is angry. And same thing with all of the emotions, to learn to separate them from yourself so that they become easily managed. If they're third party, if it was the mind and it's angry, then you can go to work on changing the mind, on working on the mind. If you say, I'm angry, what are you going to work on? You're egotistically involved in every aspect of it. And so this is part of why we do this practice. Find out what you are not. Understand that the body and mind are separate from you, and through them the whole universe is separate from you. As such, in the sense that everybody in the dream is separate from the dreamer, and yet they aren't separate from the dreamer, even though the dreamer is a separate entity with a different history, a different narrative, a different memory, a different body, a different reality. Still, even though he is separate and apart from the dream, certainly the dream is not possible without his presence or her presence. And so this is the world that we live in. Certainly everything here is separate from us, seemingly. While we're trying to figure out that we are the dreamer and not the dreamed, it's helpful to realize that everything is separate from us. But once we come to the understanding that we are the dreamer and not the dreamed, then we know that we were not separate from anything, that everything was fully us. And we could have set our sense of I arbitrarily in anything in our dream. We could have been the building. We could have been a plant. We could have been the water spout. We could have been some other person. We could have been the dog. You can be anything. And when you start seeing the reality of that, you start getting some pretty hilarious clues about the nature of this world, that God has in fact become the dog. And so when you run over, I've got two of my favorite little friends, that two big dogs that used to bark their heads off. Well, one of them still does, over on the street corner, but they're big fluffy dogs, and they come up and they put their big giant paws on the top of the chain link fence when I walk by. And I've become friends with there's a fluffy white one and a fluffy black one. The black ones will have none of my friendliness. Doesn't trust me at all. Will sit there and yap away. But the big fluffy white one, he and I have become good friends. He slobbers all over me when I pet him. I don't remember why I jumped into this story. I'm sure you found it very, very valuable, though. So this, just this knowing that God has become all things. And there's a wonderful Hafiz poem where he bends down and pets a dog, scratches a dog under its chin. And as the dog is looking up to him, he gazes into the dog's eyes and he says to him, "My beloved, I'm so happy that you have come to visit me today." And I remember the first time I read that like over and over again, like 4 or 5 times, because I thought, what a wonderful way to see God in a dog, in a street dog like that, and just a way of showing and receiving love in such a beautiful way. And so this is what we're working toward, trying to come to a working reality, to a knowing reality, that we are everything. And the way to do that is first realize who we are, that we're not in the dream. The dream is inside of us. Once we come to that realization, we come to the understanding that we are all things, and we will experience it that way. And I mean physically, in a real way. There's that story of Thakur when the fisherman got beat on the boat on the Ganges while he was meditating on the shore, and that the welts from that beating raised up on his own back. So that was him knowing the truth and manifesting that truth when he was on the boat and he ate up all the sweets and everybody was hungry, but he didn't share them with anybody. I love that story because I would have been getting angrier and angrier and angrier with every sweet he ate. I would have been like, what? But then everybody felt the sensation of their hunger abating, their hunger going away. So these are the playful ways that God has let us know that this truth is not a theoretical or a philosophical truth. This truth is the truth, and that when we come to know it, we will expand to know the universe personally, to know God everywhere personally. So to know what you are, find out what you are not. Oh my gosh, the questioner goes on forever here. The questioner says or asks, there's no question mark in there, but he says, your way of describing the universe as consisting of matter, mind, and spirit is one of the many. There are other patterns to which the universe is expected to conform, and one is at a loss to know which pattern is true and which is not. One ends in suspecting that all patterns are only verbal and that no pattern can contain reality. According to you, reality consists of 3 expanses: the expanse of matter energy, the Mahadakash, the expanse of consciousness, Chittakash, and pure spirit, Paramakash. The first is something that has both movement and inertia, that we perceive. We also know that we perceive, we are conscious and also aware of being conscious. Thus, we have 2, matter energy and consciousness. Matter seems to be in space, while energy is always in time, being connected with change and measured by rate of change. Consciousness seems to be somewhere here and now, in a single point of time and space. But you seem to suggest that consciousness, too, is universal, which makes it timeless, spaceless, and impersonal. I can somehow understand that there is no contradiction between the timeless and spaceless and the here and now. But impersonal consciousness I cannot fathom. To me, consciousness is always focused, centered, individualized, a person. You seem to say that there can be perceiving without a perceiver, knowing without a knower, loving without a lover, acting without an actor. I feel that the trinity of knowing, knower, and known can be seen in every movement of life. Consciousness implies a conscious being, an object of consciousness, and the fact of being conscious. That which is conscious I call a person. A person lives in the world, is part of it, affects it, and is affected by it. Did you follow that? That's pretty good stuff in there, actually. Interesting. He's thought about things pretty well. So Maharaj's only question, and Maharaj answers the non-question with the questions. Maharaj, why don't you inquire how real are the world and the person? Right. So this guy is what the reason for all of this confusion. It's the same prospect that all of us face, is because he's going through his senses and analyzing the world, the material world, the perceived world, and coming up with a great confusion, because it does change. Your perspective of it changes constantly. You learn something new, your worldview changes. The conditions of the world change, your ideas of the world change. And so how do you study something that will not sit still for you? This world is under a constant flux and a constant change. Every question you answer presents four more questions. It keeps splitting, and it's the most unruly study study material that you could possibly have. Imagine trying to read a book that's constantly changing. The chapters are moving, the words are moving. Yeah, there's words there. Yes, there's something there to study, sure. But what and how will you find an answer? So this is why the rishis have learned, go inward. The outward is not going to stand still for you to study and to get an accurate perspective of what is, right? And so that's why we're watching even now. Of course, it's always the case. Our science is always changing. They find a new thing and that suddenly disproves an old thing and reimagines what we think about something else, and on it goes. And we move slower and slower toward a general greater understanding. But how secure can that be? We never know when the next discovery is going to shift everything again, to find something different. And so that's why the sages are saying, go inward. And so Maharaj is telling him now to do the same thing. He's saying, look, we can't even go into that tangle of questions, that tangle of ideas you just presented. And there's not really a value in going through and trying to find the strand of thought in each one. He says, instead, let's go to the skein. Let's go to the ball of thread itself. Inquire, how real are the world and the person? And then the questioner, oh no, I need not inquire. Enough if the person is not less real than the world in which the person exists. Maharaj, then what is the question? Are persons real and universals conceptual? Or are universals real and persons imaginary? Maharaj, I love this. Neither is real. you're not even barking up the right tree. Can you imagine? I mean, this is the experience, isn't it, of spiritual life? It's like you can learn so much and still know nothing. It's phenomenal. Okay, since it's an Advaita class, we'll talk in terms of ourselves. This world that you have composed, this puzzle, this riddle that you've placed yourself in the middle of, it is your own proof that you are intelligent. Because wow, what a riddle to solve this riddle of life, and to find your realization. Wow, when we jumped into this puzzle, we didn't want to get out quickly. That's for sure. We've we've covered all the bases. So Maharaj, the questioner says, are people real, or are universals conceptual, or are universals real and persons imaginary? And Maharaj says, neither are real. A questioner, well, surely I am real enough to merit your reply, and I am a person. Maharaj, not when you're asleep. Questioner, submergence is not absence, even though asleep I am. Maharaj, to be a person, you must be self-conscious. Are you so always? Questioner, not when I sleep, of course, nor when I'm in a swoon or drugged. Maharaj, during your waking hours, are you continually self-conscious? Are you always aware of yourself? No, sometimes I'm absent-minded or just absorbed. Maharaj, are you a person during the gaps in self-consciousness? Maharaj, questioner, of course I am the same person throughout. I remember myself as I was yesterday and yesteryear. Definitely. I am the same person. Maharaj, so to be a person, you need memory? Of course. And without memory, what are you? Questioner, incomplete memory entails incomplete personality. Without memory, I cannot exist as a person. Surely you can exist without memory. You do so in sleep. Questioner, only in the sense of remaining alive, not as a person. Maharaj, since you admit that as a person you have only intermittent existence, can you tell me what you are in the intervals between experiencing yourself as a person? Questioner, I am, but not as a person, since I am not conscious of myself in the intervals. I can only say that I exist, but not as a person. Maharaj, shall we call that impersonal existence? Genius, absolutely wonderful. So do you see the general flux of what's going on here? Do you see the general line of questioning where it's coming from on the part of the questioner? Because I think it makes a lot of sense, his ideas, but the way that Maharaj is able to show the number of assumptions that we have to maintain in order to believe our worldview to be real is quite a long list of assumptions. there's quite a lot of stuff in there that we don't ever think about, like this whole line of questioning as he's going through here. Every one of them reveals some very important information, and yet how many of them have I actually asked myself? It's quite something. How much work still has to be done? But this notion, what you are is what we're trying to find. If you're saying you're a person it has all of these problems and many more, this sense of being, this awareness of yourself. And yet, it really, all the rules are up in the air because all of this is in our mind, right? And our mind, as we know, can change anything. So here we are in Brahman, which is mind, pure mind. And we're reflections. We are reflections of I am, aware of our I am. And so we spin off in little eddies of thought. And each eddy of thought is an ego. And each ego is a player in the play, right? But all of us are are eddies of thought within a single mind, which is Brahman, right? So shall we call it an impersonal existence, meaning that if you are everything, you can experience any particular as an individual, and yet in your nature, you're everything. So you're both personal and impersonal. You can play both parts, but in truth, in resting form, as it were, you are that impersonal absolute, the unchanging absolute. And it's not that the impersonal doesn't mean that you don't care in that sense. Of course, that would be such a faraway thought from that perspective, but it's not that you're cold and indifferent. That's not what we're talking about impersonal here. What we're saying is that you're not a particular here. You are personal, but you're every personal. And to be every personal, there's no point in calling yourself personal anymore, because your concerns for all is equal. Your love for all is equal. So in that sense, you're impersonal. You're not distributing your love or your intelligence. It's not being measured out by sets of conditions or circumstances. You simply are, and your door is wide open. So that's the meaning of impersonal. You don't have a preference or an aversion. That's what we mean by impersonal. You are equanimous, the man or woman of steady wisdom. Shall we call it impersonal existence? I would call it rather unconscious existence. I am, but I do not know that I am. Maharaj, you have said just now, I am, but I do not know what I am. Could you possibly say it about your being in an unconscious state? No, I could not. Maharaj, you can only describe it in the past tense. I did not know. I was unconscious in the sense of not remembering. Okay, so he's saying, you see, you can only talk about unconscious moments in past tense, right? Because if you're unconscious in the present, uh, you're not going to know it. You're not going to be able to say anything. So we can only say what we are when we're not conscious in past tense. Very interesting point. Let's see where he's going to go with that. You can only describe it in past tense. I did not know. I was unconscious in the sense of not remembering. Questioner, having been unconscious, how could I remember? And what? Maharaj, were you really unconscious or you just do not remember? Questioner, how am I to make that out? Maharaj, consider, do you remember every second of yesterday? Of course not. Were you then unconscious? Well, of course not. So you are conscious and yet you do not remember. Yes. Maybe you were conscious in sleep and just do not remember. No, I was not conscious. I was asleep. I did not behave like a conscious person. Again, how do you know? I was told by those who saw me sleep. All they can testify to is that they saw you lying quietly with closed eyes and breathing regularly. They could not make out whether you were conscious or not. Your only proof is your own memory. A very uncertain proof it is. Questioner, yes, I admit on my own terms I am a person only during my waking hours. What I am in between, I do not know. Maharaj, at least you know that you do not know. Since you pretend not to be conscious in the intervals between the waking hours, leave the intervals alone. Let us consider these waking hours only. Questioner, I am the same person in my dreams. Maharaj, agreed. Let us consider them together, waking and dreaming. The difference is merely in continuity. Were your dreams consistently continuous, bringing back night after night the same surroundings and the same people? Would you be at a loss to know which is the waking and which is the dream? Henceforth, when we talk of the waking state, we shall include the dream state also. It's a very interesting notion in dreaming that the only reason, I mean, it would be quite interesting because that's the only thing that separates a dream from our reality is the fact that it's discrete and it doesn't have one dream doesn't necessarily flow into the next, although I think we've all probably had the experience of a dream picking up where the last one let off at least once or twice. But you see the interesting point of it is that if the dream had a continuity, how would you know which was real? How would you know what was real? You know, I remember when I was 7, believe it or not, because it was such a profound, interesting experience, especially for my 7-year-old mind. I was really puzzled that day. I got home from baseball practice and I walked into the foyer of our home and I had my mitt in my hand and I was kind of playing with the ball and I went into like a daydream. I don't even remember exactly what the daydream was, but I was really into it. And when I came to myself, when I came out of the daydream, I was still standing in the foyer playing with the ball in my mitt. And I remember I was so stunned that I was still in the foyer, still playing with my ball in the mitt, because this daydream had become so real to me and so engrossing, so encapsulating, that when I came out of it and saw myself still in the same place, I was so bewildered. I remember I walked to my room and I climbed up. I was in a bunk bed at that time. I climbed up into the top bunk bed and I just laid there really disturbed because I thought to myself, how will I ever know that I'm not still standing in the foyer playing with a ball in my ball mitt? Because I thought to myself, that daydream was so real, was so all encompassing. And yet I popped out of it, and I'm still just standing in the foyer. What a strange thing. How will I ever know that, really what I was asking myself at 7 was, how am I ever going to know what's real again? How am I ever going to know? If I can be that fully taken away into a daydream and then placed right back where I was before it began, how will I ever know what is real and what isn't real? And see, that was, at the time I didn't realize it, although I know it affected me for quite some time after that, of trying to figure out, how do you know what is real? Because we can be taken away so easily all the time. And yet we have a sense of absolutism. We know what is real. I exist. This is real. Look, this chair, it's there. Look, I'm here. I'm talking to you. And yet, just like Maharaj is pointing out here, if you poke enough, if you ask enough questions, all of this falls apart. This whole narrative comes undone in our fingers. And we're left with something that we're not ready to accept, that we are expansive, that we are immortal, that we are infinite, that we are time itself, we are freedom itself, we are all of these things, that they are all our toys of expression. And really, that's all we are. We are toys of an expression in this state, in this segment of understanding. But really, we are that which is expressed, right? And that which expressed is a principle. It's not a material thing. It's a principle. And so we are simply the expression of an eternal, immortal, infinite principle, whose description we can only approach. And the last 3 words we say before knowing, the last 3 attributes are love, intelligence, and existence. I am the same person in my dreams. Okay, that's interesting, because if you know that, you're getting a pretty good idea of a reality, because you're not really the same person in your dreams. In your dreams, you don't have the same memories that you have in a waking state. You don't have the same location that you have in the waking state. You don't have the same history that you have in the waking state. You don't necessarily have the same body that you have in the waking state. And certainly you have no knowledge of who you are in the waking state while you dream. So it's interesting that he says, I'm the same person that in my dreams, because I don't think he's thought about that. This is the questioner, not Maharaj. So I'm not questioning Maharaj. I'm questioning the questioner. I don't think he could say that. Certainly, I could never say that I'm the same person. Although, what do you think? I mean, in your dream, you do seem to have the same disposition, the same sort of general personality, a sense of self, but not the same self. So it's interesting. So anyway, Maharaj lets him get away with it. Says, agreed, okay. Let us consider them together, waking and dreaming. The difference is merely in continuity. So he's saying the only difference is one dream is discrete. Tomorrow night it's going to be a different episode, no relationship to the previous episode. Were your dreams consistently continuous, bringing back night after night the same surroundings and the same people, you would be at a loss to know which is the waking and which is the dreaming. Henceforth, we will talk of the waking state. We shall include the dream state also. Questioner, agreed. I'm a person in a conscious relation with a world. Maharaj, are the world and the conscious relation with it essential to your being a person? So, is the world and your relationship with the world, is that necessary for you to be who you are? Questioner. Well, even immersed in a cave, I remain a person. Maharaj, it implies a body and a cave, and a world in which they can exist. Questioner. Yes, I can see the world and the consciousness of the world are essential to my existence as a. This makes the two are one. Right? So if you can't have one without the other, they're essentially a unit. They're a symbiotic relationship. This makes the person part and parcel of the world. If the world and your relationship to it is what makes you are a unit, there's singularity. The two are one. Questioner. Where consciousness stands alone, the person and the world appear in consciousness. Maharaj. You said appear. Could you add disappear? No, I cannot. I can only be aware of my and my world's appearance. As a person, I cannot say the world is not. Without a world, I would not be there to say it. Because there is a world, I am there to say there is a world. Maharaj, maybe it's the other way around. Because of you, there is a world. Right? Not because there's a world, there's you, but because you, there's a world. To me, such a statement appears meaningless, Maharaj. Its meaninglessness may disappear on investigation. Look into this, he says. Where do we begin? Maharaj, all I know is that whatever depends is not real. The real is truly independent. Since the existence of the person depends on the existence of the world, and it is circumscribed and defined by the world, it cannot be real. Questioner, it cannot be a dream, surely. Maharaj, even a dream has existence when it is cognized and enjoyed or endured. Whatever you think and feel has being. It may not be what you take it to be. What you think to be a person might be something quite different. It's something quite different. You see how many assumptions, when you look at me, right? You make an assumption that I exist. You make an assumption that I'm separate. If I appear to you in your dream, you would make the same assumptions, but they wouldn't be true, even though you made those assumptions. But you would continue to make those assumptions and carry on throughout the dream. And because you would make those assumptions, drama would happen between us, feelings would happen between us, information would pass between us. But if you made the assumption that I was not separate, that I was not real, none of that would happen. And what would the dream be then? What would the dream become then? It would simply become knowing, ising, being. It would become just a vaporous expression of something real behind it, namely the dreamer. Right? Questioner, I am what I know myself to be. Maharaj, not going to let him get away with that. You cannot possibly say that you are what you think yourself to be. Your ideas about yourself change from day to day and from moment to moment. Your self-image is the most changeful thing that you have. It is utterly vulnerable, at the mercy of a passerby, a bereavement, the loss of a job, an insult, and your image of yourself, which you call your person, changes deeply. To know what you are, you must first investigate and know what you are not. And to know what you are not, you must watch yourself carefully, rejecting all that does not necessarily go with the basic fact, I am. The living ideas, I am born at a given place, born at a given time from my parents, and now I am so and so, living at, married to, father of, employed by, and so on, are not inherent in the sense I am. Our usual attitude is of, I am this. Separate consistently and perseveringly the I am from this or that, and try to feel that it means what it means to be, just to be, without being this, without being that. All our habits go against it, and the task of fighting them is long and hard sometimes. But clear understanding helps a lot. The clearer you understand that though on one level of the mind you can be described in negative terms only, the quicker you'll come to the end of your search and realize your limitless being. There it is. There is one paragraph there that encapsulates the entire struggle of what we're going through. I'm just going to read it again and just let it wash through us. You cannot possibly say that you are what you think yourself to be. Your ideas about yourself change from day to day and from moment to moment. Your self-image is the most changeful thing you have. It is utterly vulnerable. It is at the mercy of a passerby, a bereavement, a loss of a job, an insult, and your image of yourself, which you call your person, changes deeply. To know what you are, you must first investigate and know what you are not. So this is spiritual life. This is religion. To investigate and find out what you are not. And to know what you are not, you must watch yourself carefully. This is that going inward. This is watching what's happening before your words come out your mouth, before an object gets a name. What's happening? What is the process? What is going on in there? And to know what you are not, you must watch yourself carefully. This constant discernment that Thakur talks to us about, the constant discerning between the real and the unreal. What is and what isn't. You must watch yourself carefully, rejecting all that does not necessarily go with the basic fact, I am. And that this is exactly how we arrive at what Thakur says, that which changes is unreal. That which is unchanging alone is real. Right? And so this I am within you, your isness, the moment, that's the only real thing we know. That's the only real thing that there is. Everything else is secondary to it and dependent upon that. But that is not dependent on anything. Your isness is. To know what you are not, you must watch yourself carefully, rejecting all that does not necessarily go with the fact, I am. The ideas, I am born at a given place. I'm born at a given time from parents, and now I am so-and-so, living at, married to, fathered of, employed by, and so on, are not inherent in the sense of I am, right? And yet, do we not totally employ all of those things in our sense of I am? You see, that's the problem. We take all of these changing attributes And our ego collects them through identifying with them and saying, this is what I am. I am a man born in upstate New York, 59 years old, a member of the Ramakrishna order. I am this, that, and the other. And yet that has not been true at any other point in my life. That's a constantly changing list of attributes. And yet that's who I say I am. And so he's saying, now that's interesting. Let's pretend you're 5. Now write your page of what you are. I'm a kindergartner. I live in Germany. I have a mom and a dad who are a dad who's American and a mom who's German. I live on a farm. I can write all of that, and then I can say, all right, now let's do the same thing for when you're 10. Okay, I'm playing t-ball. I live in Colorado, or no, that time I lived in Utah. I lived in Utah. I have a teacher named Mrs. Manning and another teacher named Mrs. Bouchard. I'm not very good at playing baseball. I can come up with that whole list, and then you can do it for when you're 15 and when you're 18 and when you're 25 and when you're 40 and when you're 55 and when you're 60. Then put all of those sheets in front of you and say, okay, look, what are you? You've described yourself in radically different ways at every point in your life. Sit here and stare at all of these descriptions that you wrote over time, and from them, find out who you are. This is what he's laying out here. Take this long list of things that you've attached to your I am. See how disparate and crazy and changing all of them are. But in all of them, find the thread that allows you to claim all of these identities. It allows you to claim the 5-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 20-year-old, the 30-year-old. Look through all of those different lists, and anything that changes from one list to the next, cross it out. It's not who you are. Find the one thing that is on every list, and that is the I am. Every description of yourself starts with I am. I am blonde. I'm 185 pounds. I'm older than I remember myself being. Everything you say about yourself starts with I am. He's just telling you, pay attention to that. That's very important. It's not grammar. That is something very, very, very important. Stop brushing over it and come to know what it means, because it's amazing what it means. Our usual attitude is of I am this. Separate, consistently, and perseveringly the I am from this or that. So separate consistently, right? Always see that distinction. Look at all that list. Those things that are changing, erase them. Keeping your focus on that which is common in all of them. Separate consistently and perseveringly, right? It means stick at this. Don't just do it while you're heating your cup of coffee in the office microwave. That's not enough time. Think about this all the time. Be perseverant in it. Keep poking until this dawns on you as true. Separate consistently and perseveringly the I am from this or that, and try to feel what it means to be, just to be, without being this or that. All our habits go against it, right? Those are our samskaras. Those are the wrong choices we've made. All of our habits go against it. And the task of fighting them, this is our spiritual life. The task of fighting them is long and hard sometimes. Boy, doesn't it seem that way? But clear understanding helps a lot. The clearer you understand that on the level of mind, you can be described in negative terms only. Bingo. Wonderful. Right there. On the level of mind, if we're going to talk about up here, what is he really saying there? You're not up here. If you're going to stay up here and describe yourself accordingly, you can only describe yourself in negatives. I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not that. Why? Because everything up here is unreal, constantly changing. So if you're going to try and define yourself through body mind, forget it. It's over. You can't. Even the potting soil doesn't last forever. And so there is no I am when you talk about body mind. The clearer you understand. Yes.
Swamiji. Hi. So I was thinking about that I can knock down all those things that you said about me pretty easily. That I was a boy and I'm a man now. When I used to not be a father, I'm a father. One day I'll be a grandfather. So all those things change. But if you look at the argument of the humanist, or maybe the atheist humanist, perhaps, kind of the
Okay.
Greeks had this thought where they said that the commonality that we always are, their genius was that I'm not a Greek necessarily, although I'm a proud Greek who can make all this great culture, but I'm a human. I'm a human. And that is something that we should sort of look to and grab onto as beings in this universe, as, you know, animals walking this earth. We are humans. And then you could say, okay, well, but maybe you're not always going to be a human. So someone who believes in an afterlife would say, okay, well, then I'll be a soul after I'm a human. But an atheist humanist could say, all I am is a human, and all I'll ever be is a human body with a brain that thinks and enjoys culture and sings and procreates. But that's all I'm ever going to be, is that human. And so I wanted to see what your reaction would be to that argument, that counter argument.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, it's based on not knowing, so there's a lot of assumptions in there. What I would be interested in talking about from a perspective coming from that perspective is, um, what assumptions are you making that make you a human? To be human, define that. There's none such thing as a human. A human is a concept. And so, what are you basing your identity as a human on? And are all of those things permanent? Are all of those things unchangeable? The problem with thinking that this world alone is real is that you can't find it. That's the problem. If you're going to assume that a past and a future exist, and in between them is your existence, you're not going to be able to find evidence of that. When does future become past? When does future become present? When does present become past? And why can't present become future? Or it does present become future? You can't find it. If you're going to say there's a past and there is a future, which is required for you to be a human, where are you talking about? Because it doesn't exist. You cannot find a present if you're going to assume the existence of a past and a future. So there's nothing there. If you're going to say, well, there's just isness, then you're going to have to say, well, there's no past and there's no future. There's only this present. Okay. And if you're going to say there's only this present, you're going to end up with the same thing. Does all of the things that this present contain at the moment, do they remain? No. Are they the same for all of us? No. Then on what basis are you drawing a description of human? On what basis are you separating out a definition of human? And so you see, it falls apart quite quickly. You just have to just stop and say, what assumptions are necessary for my statement to be true? And are all of those assumptions established? Are they unchanging?
Well, I mean, I would just a quick reply that you kind of trust what you wake up to be each day, in a sense. Like I wake up to be alive each day. You know, I wake up
Uh-huh.
to be um a body that needs food. And my kids don't change. They're the same kids. I mean, they do change, they grow, but they're not someone else's kids suddenly, you know? So I guess we get into these assumptions because we see it day to day and it becomes our world that this is the same woman I married and, God help me be this woman that I'm with when I'm 90, you know?
Right.
I guess we just get used to the natural and the sort of repetitive thing that we
That is
find
true.
ourselves to be each
That
morning when we wake up.
that is true. That we believe in the repetitive habitual reoccurrences, but really it's because they slow down over time. You know, you as long as your toddler is a toddler in the morning when you walk in the room, then you easily are like, oh yes, that's my child. But if you were Rip Van Winkle and you came back and walked into that room 25 years later thinking only a night had passed, where's my daughter? Who is this woman in this room here? Get out of here. That assumption would not be made. And so, does that mean anything? Well, yeah, sure, it means something. It means that a lot of our assumptions are easy to make because we change so little from morning to morning, that we carry on this narrative that we are the same, whatever. But in fact, if we disrupted the time segments or the flow of time, in that those things would not be so easily made, those assumptions. But no, there's no doubt. But see, the feeling of your daughter that you have toward your daughter, that is real. The feeling that you have toward your wife, that is real. So it'll grow, but it doesn't. Hopefully, well, it does change, unfortunately. But um, but you understand that from your universal nature, everything is a part of you. So feeling that from a particular perspective is also natural. And that's not the problem. The problem is that you only feel it toward particular things. You know, everybody in an abstract, just abstract at one level, your daughter is no different to you than another person's daughter is to them. There's a uniformity there. There's something that is the same in every relationship between a parent and a child, and so you can start looking for the sameness in that, and that's going to lead you to the true nature of what you are. That love. You're going to find that everything in the world that you use to describe yourself is something related to love, something related to intelligence. But yeah, but we're not that. We're not our habits, and your wife may not be there when you're 90. And, none of these things are sure. You may not, even from now on, always be a father. And certainly you weren't a father before. And so what value is it to call yourself a father? Since it's not necessary to your sense of who you are. And what is necessary to your sense of who you are, right? And this is the question that they're pondering right now. What is necessary for me to be? And it's a very interesting question, because you find out that nothing is necessary, because that's how we define real. That which depends on nothing alone is real.
It would kind of be interesting to go on a retreat where no one had a past.
Yeah. It would be delightful. We would know freedom for the first time. Of course, yeah. That's our trouble, really. Because ego exists only from the past. It's composed only from the past, only from memory. It has no existence in the true moment.
Just to build on that, what if we all agree to go on a retreat where nobody talked about their past and no one said their name or identified themselves by a name?
It'd be wonderful.
It'd be an interesting thing to do for sure. Yeah, I'd like to sit and do some thinking about that. Uh, it would be very interesting. We would fail, there's no doubt, because as soon as you had the impetus to say something, you would realize the impetus to say something only comes from the past. But it would be really good because it would be a wonderful group effort at what we normally are trying to do on our own. That's fascinating. Maybe in our June retreat we'll have a half a day or of that, just so that we would become aware at how much of creatures of the past we are, and how much of everything in our moment is built on the past, and that will show you your bondage. That will show you in a very real way your bondage. That's a wonderful idea. I have no idea how we would manifest that, though. That'd be a really interesting notion, because really, technically, we couldn't do anything.
Well, I mean, it would be a very free experience.
Yeah, yeah. No, it could be extremely powerful. That's a nice idea. We'll have to think about how to how to do something like that. But yeah, but even if we can't do it now, be free from your past, because it's a wonderful thing. It's one thing that I do, and oddly enough, my life is looking more and more like that as I go along here. But sometimes you wake up, you're stressed about something, or you've got some anxiety about something, and then just remember, there is no such thing as a past. It's a concept in your mind, and watch that anxiety diminish significantly. And then, anxiety, actually, Eckhart Tolle says that anxiety comes from living in the future. Resentment and regret come from living in the past. And so those things, each belief, a belief in a past and a belief in a future, has its symptoms, but they are both an illness, because there is only now, and the entire past is indicated in this moment, and the entire future is projected from this moment. So the only thing that can change anything is this moment.
Yeah, check it at the door.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, we'll do it. Set yourself free, because that is the experience of the enlightened soul. He has dropped it down. As a matter of fact, let me read you this piece from the poem yesterday that I did for yesterday's vlog, because he says here he wants you to do this experiment for this aliveness, to come to know what aliveness is. He says, we don't start this journey with a mind full of options, of opinions and theories, for it would become an obstacle. Such deceit prevents the investigation. Therefore, we set off totally relaxed, free from what we have accumulated throughout time. We eliminate the past through all-encompassing attention, focused in the present, encountering images and thoughts arising from the ancestral past and memory. The mind, an empty vessel, free from time, therefore completely independent, is able to encompass the newness of life, eternally new, never repeating itself. Traveling together, each for himself, here is what we accomplish. Let us continue. The aliveness existent within us appears only in one circumstance: when we do not want it, when we do not imagine it, when we do not call for it, when the psychological past recorded in the mind completely vanishes. This psychological death is essential. Let thoughts, knowledge, and attachments disappear, as well as the knower, the entity who knows or experiences. There is nothing left of the ego, only a lucid attention, a state of enlightenment. Thus, the aliveness reveals itself to us in this very life, enveloping us completely. When we die physically, we only melt with this aliveness, detached from everything that tied us to life, various bondages to persons, to things, to fame, to glory, or ideas that bind us. Is it easy? Is it difficult? Do you understand what I have just described from direct personal experience or just intellectually? When the mind only understands words connected grammatically, what the author describes has not been understood. Try again. Reread this again. Remain alone with yourself as one movement. It is clear, simple, and direct experience. The entity who tries to know, the entity who tries to accumulate and understand the unknowable, is totally excluded. The merit is solely yours through a real experience. Any teacher is excluded. Try to understand the meaning of what the verse merely points to. So
You're reading from Swami C?
I'm reading from this Iliciaro, Life is Eternal Newness. So it's this whole being this I am only. That's what he's been pushing at all morning here, is the sense of I am is the only thing that is reliable, that doesn't change, upon which everything else depends. So it meets all the quantifications. I am does not change. I am is not dependent on anything. It is the only thing that you can know in your life, right? I remember probably some 15 years ago now, maybe more than that, I sat in the shrine one day and I thought to myself, what is one thing that I know that doesn't depend on anything else that I know? You know, and I sat there and just started cataloging my thoughts. It's like, no, that requires so many things I can't even list them all. You know, nope, that one too. It's like trying to find out what was my first thought. You know, what thought could possibly occur in an empty mind, right? What is one thought that could possibly occur in an empty mind? And really, the only one that you'd come up with is I, being. Before we took that ice cream scoop of life and filled the bowl with scoop after scoop of experience, our very first thought in an empty mind could only be is. So you have always known who you are. You just have to stay empty. We've become so dependent, so defined by mind, that even the notion, even the thought of getting rid of mind threatens us, right? Threatens us. We can't conceive. Surely, if I didn't have a mind, surely if I didn't think, I'd be an idiot. We can't conceive of the opposite being true. That finally, because you have done away with mind, you have ceased to be an idiot. Because you are no longer basing your things on things that are constantly changing, constantly rearranging. You're coming from the only stable place that you will ever know. I am. And fortunately and beautifully and poetically, and the thing that makes the bhaktis just sing with delight, is that this nature is of love, and that this nature is of intelligence. That is so important and self-evident, you know, self-evident in the way that we are. These are things that are yours when you're alone. They're yours. They're things that no one gives you. The ability to know love, to see it, to experience it, and to give it. The ability to know beauty, to see it, to recognize it, to express it. These are what you are. And these are the most wonderful things in life. And the wonderful thing about wonderful things in life that aren't dependent upon anything is that they're yours in a lonely room with no one else around, with nothing else working for you. You could be starving to death, laying at the edge, sitting under a tree in a forest with 15 lions and a vulture waiting to eat you. And if at that moment you could still set aside your mind, you would still have beauty. You would still have love. You would still have existence and all of its profundity. And this is why the enlightened soul laughs. No, this is why ecstasy. This is why unity. So, oh my gosh, it's 10:10. I'm sorry.